It's rivalry week as the Jaguars go to Tennessee to take on the Titans. I'll tell you why, at least for a day, the Jaguars were jealous of the Titans organization. I'll do all of that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What up, good people? Thank you for joining me, Tony Wiggins, your host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, for another episode of Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before, because BetOnline is where the game starts. I'm glad you start here with us on Locked On Jaguars every single day, and reminding you that it's free on all platforms, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe on the YouTube page as well. All right, good people, some stuff to get into today. The last show I did, I spoke about how and why the Jaguars, in my opinion, needed to fire general manager Trent Baalke. And as soon as I did that, the Titans fired general manager John Robinson. You say, what do they have to do with the other? Well, aside from the fact that they played each other this week, I think the Jaguars will have a lesson that they can learn about themselves this week on the field when they go out and try to play the Tennessee Titans this weekend. And after having the most lifeless game, at least of the Doug Peterson era this past week against Detroit, see if they can muster up something and try to figure out that this thing ain't over, man. They can win 2 games against the Titans down the stretch. There'll be 1 game out in the division. We'll talk about that in segment 2. Talk about what will happen and what needs to happen, whether or not they will actually fire Trent Baalke. I doubt it. And what needs to happen, like if they do, what are we looking for if they do make changes at the GM spot for the future of this franchise? But first, I want to talk about the fact that you guys have inundated me on social media, and I do apologize for not having a lot of interaction because I've been trying to get well with this bug. I don't know what the hell and where I caught it from, but it's got me beat down a little bit. But so pardon my voice as well, and any pauses that you might hear if there's an occasional cough. But the Jaguars, I made the podcast that they need to fire the GM. And then the Titans go and fire one of the most rock solid dudes and one of the most consistent GMs who's won, I think, over 60% of his games. And the thing that I noticed about that is folks immediately said to me, if they could do it, why can't we do it? And I understand that. I will say you're in 2 different situations, right? One situation is the Jaguars have been so bad that when you get a little bit of normalcy and competitiveness and you actually come out and show improvement, there's a tendency to want to sit there for a while and say, hey, this feels good to actually not be the worst team in the league, like to be the Houston Texans, ironically, who beat us, but still they're the worst team in the league, right? And they've given you some things to feel good about, mainly Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson. But the thing is, even in that situation, you'll still look at missed opportunities as exactly what they are, missed opportunities. I just mentioned the loss to the Houston Texans. If they won that game, which is a division game, they'd be a rock solid 2 games behind Tennessee right now with a chance to beat Tennessee 2 times down the stretch. So you do look at missed opportunities, and you do look at how close some of these games were. You also look at the fact that in what could have been the biggest game of the year, in a weekend where the Titans lost to the Eagles, the Jaguars came out against the Detroit Lions and played the most flat, uninspiring football, and nobody had an answer as to why. Everybody was just saying, well, that was terrible and unacceptable. We know that. Yeah, we agree with you. But what happened? This is where I do want somebody to come out and say, well, what had happened was. But there was nothing. Everybody was just like, I don't know, So I think internally they have to find that out. And that's why I said that they need to find some dogs, some more dogs, and they need to find guys who will take it upon themselves to actually go out and make sure that you don't have an effort that is unexplainable, right? And that leads me to Trent Baalke. What the Titans basically said, and this is why it's different from the Jaguar situation, is their window of opportunity to get something done is fading, right? And they got smashed the other day by a player. You don't trade guys like that. You don't trade 25-year-old wide receivers that are amongst the top 7 or 8 in the league at their position. Not when you give Bud Dupree and Ryan Tannehill a bunch of money. You just can't do it, right? And then you drafted guys, I keep joking, but one of the guys that they drafted was wanted by the cops during the draft process. How do you not know that? And then how do you not know that another kid is suffering from some mental health disorders and you never get any play out of him and use a first-round draft pick on him and Isaiah Wilson? So I get that as solid as he was and as consistent as the Titans were, that John Robinson had a reason why he had to go, and he gave them a reason. I also get something else, and I want to attach this to Jacksonville. And shout out to my man Tyler Rowland. You hear the crossover with my man Titans. You're the same guy that goes Jaguars. Are you serious? Or when I said you damn right, you'll hear Tyler Rowland, me and him tomorrow. But this is something that I know he and I will discuss is the difference in the Jaguars now as opposed to before was that this is a coach-centric team. This team is not front office centric. And the Titans are the same way. As much as people love John Robinson and his reputation, that is Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel has his handprint, his imprint on that entire situation in Tennessee, just like Jacksonville. I'll give you an example of some accomplished coaches that aren't bigger than the team that they coach for. Mike Tomlin will never be bigger than the Pittsburgh Steelers, and John Harbaugh is not going to be bigger than Baltimore. But yet and still, they're both accomplished. They're both guys that are considered top 5 or top 6, if not higher. But if teams are stale and they feel like they need to make a change, they're not going to change their infrastructure because their infrastructure is what they believe is likely their strength. They'll ask those coaches to change their staffs. They won't fire them. Pittsburgh hadn't fired any. Pittsburgh had 3 coaches my whole life, and I'm 53. Pittsburgh has had 3 coaches from the time that I didn't go to the bathroom every 20 minutes until now, which I do. So the thing is that I was a little boy. You know what I'm saying? And they've only had 3 coaches. They ain't gonna fire anybody. But the thing is, when you're a team like Jacksonville and you don't have that tradition and you don't have that infrastructure and you don't have a bunch of Mount Rushmore GMs and coaches in your past, you have a tendency to lean on your coaches. And I think Mike Vrabel wanted more control. Mike Vrabel if they felt like there was a change that had to happen, they weren't going to get rid of the coach because, like I said, he's the DNA of the team. And I don't think Jacksonville, even after 1 year, I don't think they're in a different situation with Doug Peterson. So if you need something else to change here in Jacksonville, that's why it's very easy for me to say, make that change, Trent Baalke. Should have never been in there in the first place, but that's a whole nother story. All right, lessons learned from the Titan situations. We'll get into that here in segment 2 on Locked On Jaguars after I let you guys know that today's show is sponsored by Turo. It's Turo, but it's pronounced Turo. Turo is the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget. Book an SUV or minivan for a family trip, a pickup truck for some errands, or even test drive an EV, that's an electric vehicle. But listen, every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Taro. Now, my man James Rapine, who hosts Locked On Bengals and Locked On NFL with me, he went to Texas and he actually rented a Tesla. So he used Turo and got a Tesla. So the thing is you get a chance to test out new vehicles. You get a chance to test out every kind of car you want, whether it's a sports car or get a classic luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. It's affordable. And once again, every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms and conditions and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Tero, which is the world's largest car sharing marketplace. All right, running up in segment 2 here. This is your man Tony Wiggins here with Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. I really do appreciate you guys too. Everybody's been reaching out to me trying to see if I'm okay. I don't know what the hell's going on. I got a little bug, and if you notice a little something different in my voice, bear with me. But we're gonna make it. We're gonna do good. I just couldn't help myself. I had to come over here and talk to my people. Um, I talked about the Jags fans that told me they were jealous of the Titans. Why? Why are they jealous? It was because the Titans had the guts to do what it doesn't appear that Shad Khan has the courage to do. Shad Khan fired Urban Meyer a little bit more than halfway through the season, but Urban was a terror in the Jaguars building and facility. Should have never gotten a job. People gave Shad Khan credit for acting. I don't know if he acted as swiftly as he probably could have, but it's faster than he's ever reacted before to coaching. And I think a lot of that stuff came internally, and you can best believe that the quarterback likely had a lot to do with that if they asked him. But this is a little bit different. This is not to say that Trent Baalke is a bad man. This isn't to say that some things he's done have not panned out, because I think some of the best players, if not all of the best players on the team right now, are guys that were picked last year in the draft, and even some to some extent this year, even though the rookies this year have seemed to hit a proverbial wall. Or there are people that were acquired through free agency, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, guys that have had big moments, Foye Oluokun. Yeah, the top 6, 7, 8 people on this team, if you add in Brandon Sheriff also, are guys that were acquired the last 2 years. Now, the funny part about that is the Jaguars were awful 2 years ago, and my mama could have been added to the team and been one of the 7 best players on the ball club. So that's not saying a whole lot. And this is what I said yesterday is like, has he been awful? No, but in the grand scheme of things, you have to ask yourself, well, some people might say he's been awful, but just for the sake of this discussion, let's say he hasn't been. The question isn't whether he's been terrible or that he's done a whole bunch of stuff that hasn't worked. The question is, are you confident that he is the person to lead this team into the future? And the answer to that question is a resounding no, which is what Tennessee said yesterday, if you pay attention. They've been consistent. They won the division year after year. They even went to the AFC Championship game. They beat the Kansas City Chiefs in a game. It does not matter. They're trying to win a championship before their window of opportunity closes. And by getting rid of a guy like A.J. Brown, they went further away from that being a reality. And somebody in that organization says, we need a change. This is stale. But we're not getting rid of our coach, who is the heartbeat of the team, so we have to make a change somewhere else. And I think they're in a position, just like the Jaguars could be, where they can go out and get someone who is a perfect match for Mike Vrabel, who will go do his shopping for him and who understands exactly what Mike Vrabel wants to do. Now, this doesn't mean that they didn't have a good working relationship in Tennessee. I don't know that. And I don't think that Doug Peterson and Trent Baalke have a bad working relationship at all. I haven't heard anyone even hint at that. But what I am saying is, it's not about who gets along. It's about who can get this thing moving along and make the Jaguars a contender, especially while you have Trevor Lawrence under a rookie contract. The Jaguars have to do a lot of soul searching because he's under a rookie deal, but yet and still they have almost zero salary cap. They got to make a bunch of cuts. They got to do some restructuring. And now once you do that, you can't double down on bad additions. You can't have another Folo Fadukazi type contract with Folo Fadukazi type production. You can't have another trade up into the first round for Devin Lloyd, only for Devin Lloyd to get benched. And it doesn't mean that Devin Lloyd is bad. It just means that when you added Devin Lloyd to this team, the team was bad. And if he got benched for somebody else who's bad or who's a rookie just like him. So that in and of itself says that there's something wrong here, right? Especially when you look around at the league and you see guys like Jack Sanborn and you see these other cats making plays all over the field for the team, and Jack Sanborn wasn't even drafted. These are the things that have to stop. The question is, will it happen? Will the change happen? If it will happen, when will it happen? And what exactly would it look like? And what exactly does it entail? And how and why do I believe it won't happen? And I know I've been going through this the whole day about, is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? And all of a sudden now I'm telling you that I don't believe it will happen. I also mentioned a report that I heard on yesterday in just a second, after I let you know that today's show is sponsored by betonline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. We've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get you going and to get your betting fixed, satisfied. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. I'm still going to stay focused on the New Jersey Nets and see if they can figure out how to play defense and see if they can get it done and try to make a run into the playoffs, because I'm all into that NBA right now. So make sure you go to betonline.net, because betonline is where the game starts. Start here making me your first listen every single day here on Locked On Jaguars, and we are absolutely grateful. Make sure you make your second listen to Locked On Sports Today podcast, hosted by my buddy Peter Bukowski. So what happens is these sports stories in every single sport in every single city happen, and we have a local expert here on Locked On that can actually tell you exactly what is going on. That's what happens in less than 30 minutes every single day. The Locked On Sports Today show gives it to you like you can't get, and it's all bundled up in one nice package. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you like and subscribe as well and make it your second listen. Will it happen? Will the Jaguars make a change? Maybe. There's apparently a report. Somebody sent it to me. I haven't been able to substantiate it, where a certain reporter says that Balky may take another position in the organization. Pardon me while I get my cough drop. That Balky might take another position in the organization, and the Jaguars could possibly be in the market for another GM. If they do that, I already put my bid in for Mike Bradway from Kansas City. Right? I'll get to more of that later at some point. I'm a betting man, like I just told you at BetOnline. I don't think it'll happen because Shad Khan has a tendency to kind of slow poke on these things and move really slow. I definitely can understand at this point why he would hesitate, and that would be because simply there's been a lot of movement, and if you keep doing this, you just become the person that is always trying to fire somebody, right? So there's been a lot of movement with that. But I also believe that, as I pointed out, you now have a team that's coach-centric, who actually knows what the hell he's doing and not just saying he's a coach-centric guy and he's going to be the best of the best. Doug Peterson actually commands that sort of respect from his team. So Once you have that, take advantage of it. I've always said, and you know, everyone has heard me on here say, the way you start winning is to get a combination of coach and quarterback. Well, they have that now, so you have to take advantage of it while you can. Get a GM or a personnel guy that is a supplemental part of what that coach wants. When you have a coach centric team who's a big figure, a big enough figure that he ought to have his GM be in more of a supportive role than to be the person that makes all the decisions and just says, figure it out. So I don't know if it will happen. If I bet my money, I'd say no. I'm just telling you it needs to. And maybe there at some point there's a combination of them both. So what needs to happen? What I just said. You need to get a guy who understands that this is a coach centric team and that they're there to be sort of a servant. They're in service to the head coach, and to go out and get everything that head coach needs without baggage or trepidation about thinking that he has something to prove or that they lean too heavily on traits as opposed to just getting guys that fit what the coach wants. The ultimate goal, man, is just to get results for the organization and ultimately the fans that have been so wonderful to this team. Moving forward, a lot depends on whether they win these games and how they look. If they win or if they don't win, how they look. I don't think people were super disappointed in all the losses this year, maybe except the Texans or the Giants. I do think because they got whipsawed the other day at Detroit, who's a team in a similar situation, that one didn't rub everybody the right way. In fact, it rubbed people the wrong way because they got thumped. And they have another game against another team down the stretch. Of course, they got two against the Titans. They have one against Dallas that nobody thinks they have a chance in hell of winning, but it's going to be packed to the rafters. They have another game against Houston. The game against Houston, they cannot be the only team. It's looking like they're going to be the only team that Houston beats all year. So they cannot be the team that Houston beats twice. And then the game against the Jets is very similar because if you remember, Trevor Lawrence was pick one. Zach Wilson, who's been benched, is pick two. Those teams were side by side, and now the Jets are fighting for a wild card spot, and the Jaguars are still trying to figure things out. The Jets also are 2 years into their coaching change, where the Jaguars had to make a coaching change and dig themselves out of a hole that Urban Meyer put them in. So a lot to talk about, a lot of things to look at. If they don't win against Dallas, if they split or are very competitive in 2 games against Tennessee, I think people will be fine. If they lose to the Titans and they don't look good against the Jets, that could be the thing that flips this thing over the top and has folks wondering if they're going to make a move. Thank you for joining me on this Locked On podcast today here on Locked On Jaguars. Tune in tomorrow. You'll have the crossover with me and my little brother, Tyler Rowland from Locked On Titans, and I know you'll enjoy that. Until then, y'all take care of each other, man, and get ready for this game this weekend. I'm Tony Wiggins, signing off from Locked On Jaguars.